And welcome back to the Intrinsic Minds podcast, where it is about how you think, not what you think. We could care less about what you think.
That's right.
To my fellow podcaster and best friend Gio, how we doing today?
Great. We're moving right along. We're at the foundation of the big three today, with going into understanding the ascendant. And yeah, I think that's gonna create a nice pillar for the rest of what we are going to be doing with the rest of the planets and further on from that. So, and yeah, I like that it's brought a lot of even just self perspective in my life to go back into these basics, and definitely recommend it for people to go back into the basics and everything. And for those that have been watching through this series and appreciate it, we thank you. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and yeah, let's continue going through this. How you doing?
We're doing. And yeah, and to add to that, it's if you're just joining in, the big three in astrology is the most popular, and I think it's what gets most people. We talked about, how the sun sign, just like the sun in the sky, is so easy to see, you can't miss it, and just like that, the archetype is so easy to be attracted to and fall into when you first get into this stuff. But when you know your big three, you have the pillars is definitely a good way to put it. You definitely understand the foundation of how a natal chart works. And this happens to be just as important as the first two. The ascendant is what sets the whole stage for your chart, right? It's the sun is who you're, aspiring to be and what you're becoming in a sense, or what you already are and what you're discovering as is what's your, what powers your solar system, yourself, of your, of your life. And your moon being the internal world, and the energy of that sun reflecting off of and how you internalize and then push back out again. But the ascendant, why it's so important and part of the big three, is because it sets the stage, as in it sets the areas of life, and it sets also with the ascendant or rising sign, you're actually, if it were to be a part of a house, if we were to metaphorically put a house together as an astrology chart, it's the front door. So it's what people are going to see first, and it's going to be it's going to be the greeting that you give people, or what people see and how people experience you. It's your behavior and all of that. So the ascendant is almost like the superficial ego, or the behavior that you push out. So finding out what the ascendant was in my chart was how you had said the moon was yours and all that. All three of them really were, but the ascendant made everything make sense because I have Sagittarius rising and a Gemini sun, and they're opposites. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not about the details. I'm always about the big picture. I want to think big and deep and all of that. And Gemini just wants to chatter about the small shit. And I'm like, oh, Sag rising, shit. That makes complete sense. No doubt. So I've been attracted to my ascendant probably more than my sun the past few years, because it has set the stage for the whole chart, and it made me see the bigger picture in itself, speaking Sagittarius like. Gio, what about you? So you being the Virgo rising, what's been your experience in noticing the ascendant in your life? I think I could easily point things out, but I'll let you do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, going like it was hand in hand, moon and ascendant. But I think definitely you're right. The ascendant was more so like a bigger pill to swallow for me, because it was just like, especially me having, how my chart plays out, but having the Virgo rising and being ruled by Mercury, and where my Mercury is placed, like it was more. It let me see more meticulously how much work I needed to do with myself, if anything. And it really gave me the picture of like, oh, this is how you get in your way all the time. And that was really the thing. And, coming to terms with overthinking, over analyzing, being critical and stuff like that, and falling into the Pisces moon, or being fucking, rapid fire, wanting to act upon the rapid fire mentality and shit like that. That was the thing. But I mean, yeah, I feel like that's the other thing about the ascendant going into it, is like, it really gives you that first it's a big kicker into really looking at the birth chart, looking at a chart, if anything, when you're trying to, do that reading and anything. Like, it's a good starting point. You don't have to start with that, but it is a very common thing to look through that lens first as the starting point, being that it is, when you look at what your rising sign is, it's going to the first house is and show you your whole house system and everything. And then also what your ruling planet is. And it's like a big pinball match. I feel like after that, like, you start and then you go to the ruler of your chart, and then what that is, what's ruling that house and what's ruling, that. And like, and you just kind of, this is where you get like this navigation throughout your chart. And I think that's what understanding now the sun and the moon and stuff and seeing this gives you that preemptive go of how to read into it as well.
Yeah. And like I said, setting the stage. So like knowing your ascendant, your areas of life and how they're colored in too, because that's what you get with the houses. And so by knowing this, and even your chart ruler, which is basically cohesive with it's only adding more to the ascendant, but your chart ruler, if you look at your ascendant sign and you see what, whatever sign that is, whatever planet rules that sign, look at that planet in your chart, and that's going to be just as important as your sun and moon. So, but it's still in cohesion with what the ascendant is. It's going to play into it still. Where, Geo, you have this 7th house Mercury in Aries, and that rules your chart. But you're a Virgo rising and a Taurus sun and a Pisces moon. But that fiery Aries rules your chart because that's where Mercury is, and that's where you get that, like, you have the impulse, or just like we were talking about with Brandon, where you were like, I want to go to war for my friends or people I'm in partner, like people that I'm close to or whatever. It's like, there's that, no Virgo rising wants to do that. Nor like, you know what I mean? Like, meaning unless you have that placement, Virgo rising is critical. Like, but Virgo isn't a, like, I'm going to attack, that's that Aryan energy.
Yeah. I'm just going to kind of observe that and maybe criticize that in my own mental space and everything. But yeah, it's definitely true. Which I actually had a thing I saw a comment on, which this is different, obviously, because I don't care as much about it, but there was a funny comment somebody left on like an old repo that we had put on YouTube from the Hitler Productions or whatever about the flat earth thing. And I was just reading the comment. I was like, it's funny. And like part of me wanted to react and respond, and I was like, no. It's like, and I just it didn't deserve my time and stuff like that. But I did take more of a Virgo step back and approach it, and it was just like, well, that's funny how you said this one thing and just contradicted your whole statement. But that's funny.
Yeah, I mean, and that's it's even with something like that. I mean, most people have to understand that we're all looking to have those battles because I feel like either we don't want to feel stupid or we don't want to be wrong, and there's an ego thing and all that, and that's an Aries energy, so you have to deal with that too. Like, your thought process is like, your ego wants to step in and be like, I could destroy this person, but then the Virgo is like, yeah, but is there any use to this? Because that's what it does, right? Like, it assimilates everything and it's like, what's going to be useful though? I just went to work for about 2 weeks with a Virgo who runs doing an odd job type of business. And my Gemini conversation skills where I just talk about whatever and this and that, but that squares Virgo. Virgo's like, they show no interest in the things that has no value or has no assimilation to the moment. And that's would be the power of you using your Virgo rising, and feeding it with that Mercury Aries. So the ascendant totally puts everything in perspective to the point of how you're supposed to behave, or if you do behave a certain way and you don't, and you're like, why do I behave like that? Someone say with like, try to think of something that's real opposite, but like someone with like a Pisces rising, or let's use an inner planet, someone with like an Aries rising, but Mars is in Cancer. So like, and that's squares and everything, and that's in the 4th house. Like, you would think an Aries rising is just a go-getter and wants to go to war and all that, but you come to find out that only happens when they're in the home, or in the home sphere, or it's for their family, right? So they're not going to be the warrior, the Aryan warrior and all that, because where Mars was was placed. So it's going to tell this whole different, it's going to color it in. But when you do see that Aries side come out, you go, oh, it's it's the behavior.
Yeah.
It's just that certain placement of the chart ruler is going to trigger that behavior more so than not, right? I have Jupiter ruling my chart because I'm a Sagittarius rising, and it's in the 8th house in Cancer conjunct the moon. So Jupiter's colored in with my moon sign in Cancer. So there's family, there's nurturing, there's, and then it's in the 8th house, which is occult, psychology, all that. And I ask any one of my friends or anybody out there that I talk to, is like, I'm the person to talk to if you need to spill your emotions out, or talk about some deep subject, or talk about something that's bothering you or whatever. And I'm there for that. And that Jupiter energy, that exuberance and that jovialness comes out in that 8th house sphere of talking psychology, talking trauma, talking occult, and all of that. If it was in the 5th house, it would be about gambling and sports and playing games and sex and having fun and all that. But it's not. The Jupiter comes out in that 8th house sphere. It's when I really tap into it. So anybody out there, when you go get a chart read, this is why you would pay an astrologer, because they're going to look at your ascendant sign. Maybe not first, but that's going to be a big part of telling the story of everything, of where everything needs to be placed. In what areas of life, and where your sun sign is. You're not going to know the house unless you know the ascendant, and you find this out by knowing your birth time to the exact and place. So yeah, this like I said, for me was a big altering thing, and saying, oh wow, I got this bigger picture now. And when I learned about the houses and what they meant, like, this is like, if you're going to know astrology, you need to know this, or you're not getting any substance really out of your readings or your descriptions that you're finding on the internet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's where you always hear that emphasis on your ascendant, the rising sign, more so than your sun, and especially when it comes to horoscopes and stuff like that, because that's originally what horoscopes were looking at, because it's more dependent based on the hours in that sort of sense, whereas you get a bunch of people that are the same sun sign as you when they're born in the same month, but it's a lot more specific when it gets down to the ascendant, because that's by around every 2 hours ish. Yeah, 2 hours. So
it's the sign on the eastern horizon. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the thing. And you got to think about that. The sun on the eastern horizon, what is that really signifying then for you as an individual, where it's how you've come into things, how you appear, above the horizon in that sort of sense. So it's somewhat of how you appear, though, appearance in the outside sense could be more so your midheaven and everything, which eventually we'll get to that. And, but that is another point.
Achievement. That's more achievement based.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but we'll get to that point as well, but this is also, this is a very personal part of your soul, and a very personal part of figure of speech here, but like the cross that you bear, this is
it is what creates the cross, right?
Yeah. This is a major point in your cross, in your chart and everything and stuff too. So, but it's the first self impression, and it determines, like I said, the house system and the personality appearance, the ascendants, it gives you like how you're going to, we find our energy source and stuff too. So like, it's going to be that initial thing of how we are going to even start things, how we even start ourselves in that sort of way.
Yeah. It's a good way to see it as a metaphor, or, an analogy type is, your sun is kind of like where you're going, or like the destination, and your ascendant's the car that you're in and how you're getting there, so like you're using that ascendant. And it's right, like the symbolism of its rising is it's also who you're becoming as well. Like you're learning to harness the behavior and use that behavior and ego in that way, that superficial way of how you're gonna, like for me as an example, is I have to use the Sagittarian way of the big beliefs and the big conversations and thinking beyond and thinking spiritual and being jovial and all of that to access the Gemini in me. right? Like I'm not going to get to the details until I go see the big picture. And I could relate this to everything that I've learned in my life or like things I've studied, like music. Music, I'm a very much like learning music. I'm a big picture guy first, naturally, before I knew astrology, meaning I would need to just hear the music, learn it without knowing any scales or what key it's in or what's the tempo or what genre is this and all that first, like all the details. It would be like, let me just listen to it, let me try and imitate it and whatever, and then I would use retroduction, work backwards to go, okay, now what's the details? Oh, I wrote this in the harmonic minor or Phrygian dominant scale, and it's in the key of G sharp, and all that. And then I would get all Gemini about it once I used and obtained the big picture. Same thing would say something like astrology. I had to understand the big picture concept first before I could understand the details. So I'm using that Sagittarian way of kind of that filter and the way I naturally am and that I'm acting and what I've risen into as a human being, especially after the age of 32 or 3, after your Saturn return, when you're really finding yourself, you access that rising sign and you're going to use it to really go and harness the solar energy. You're using it to get to that destination. And that's the kind of way I would see it. If you were to try and put, because the whole point of your astrology chart too, and once again, why you would pay an astrologer is they're there to assimilate and integrate the story and put it together for you. Not just look at, oh, your Mercury's in Aries, you must be an impulsive thinker and conversationalist. Or, oh, your Mercury's in Taurus, you must be fucking lazier, work really slow. Or, oh, Venus is in Aries, you must go get, like, all that stuff's true. But how does it play into the story of the whole chart? And that ascendant, which is set the stage for all the houses and where everything is and what planets in what house and what area of life, is the thing that's going to be that cohesion to tell the story. You need it. And that's the importance of the ascendant.
Yeah. You can't just throw some flour, egg, and water and shit together and be like, well, that's bread.
Right.
You gotta fucking put it together, a certain amount of timing of whipping it and baking it and shit like
process.
That.
Right.
Exactly. There's a whole thing that needs to happen with it. But yeah, absolutely. The ascendant is that whole how we are waking up to things too. Like, and it's about, you can actually see a lot of like the experiences coming out of shadow as well through the ascendant in that way, and like how we rise to the occasion of things. And that's what it really is. It's like, it's really observant in this sort of sense when you're first coming into it, is to really take that more observation of nature and that standpoint and stuff too. I mean, think about if that's what it is the sun on the, where it's rising on the horizon and stuff like that at the time of birth or where it was. Think about even yourself in the womb and stuff too, and the different archetypes that play in there as well, and maybe where it was coming from and stuff too. Like even if you were on a certain cusp of the timing you were born, your rising could have been the previous sign, or if it was later on, then it could be the next and stuff. So right. There is some sort of, if you really want to, you could go deeper into those qualities of that, especially when you look at the degree of which it is and stuff. And, they say there's more of a maturation point of maybe that sign, when it comes to the ascendant. Like for me, like mine's 27 degrees, my ascendant. And where a lot of people may think me to be, meticulous, need to like, I got to break out my notebook, I got to write down this, I got to plan accordingly all the time and stuff like that, where I found that to be not necessarily true. And when I tried to do that, I was going against myself. Like I felt like that maybe more so mentally I had things prepared in a sort of sense. Like I feel more comfortable, kind of planning them out in my head a little bit. But what I've noticed is that's what takes is if you look into, now your chart ruler, which mine is Mercury being in Aries and stuff, is that I do have more of a better way of doing things or coming to and becoming or going to the occasion when I kind of think it out a little bit, but I allow the room for spontaneity to happen and stuff. And things just seem to come together more like that. Whereas I feel like I can minimize myself if I try to plan everything to a T or overanalyze things and stuff too, where, yes, it could be a little bit it could be a little bit flighty in that sense too, but that's where I could see where it's like, oh, well, maybe that says something to maybe the degree of which the ascendant is on. It's like maybe you have not, I don't want to say perfected, but like maybe you have almost inherited in those ways of doing those things. So maybe it's not necessarily something that needs to happen, need to necessarily do those things, especially when you look at the other aspects of your chart, when you look at it through that lens and everything. But yeah, I mean, it's very interesting to see that part of yourselves, because it also could be like how we also detach from the world too, in a certain sense, like how we hit our limit, and that plays along even on that same line, and it goes into your IC, into your descendant as well. But it can be, because if you think about it, there's the horizon, it's the beginnings and the endings as well. So there's something to say about how we finally find our breaking point with certain things, and how we're going to kind of project that out as well.
Yeah. And you mentioned descendant. The ascendant is you. It's your first house, the house of self. But on that opposite side of the cross, that horizontal line, you have the descendant, which is actually your house of other people and the partnerships. It's what the ascendant's looking at, right? So you're going to use this ascendant to also then find out who it is of the people that you're going to be working with, or the sphere outside of, like, what you aren't in a way, or what you use. Like, I have a sun in the 7th house. So I use this archetype to say, okay, so my sun is in the house of partnerships and other people. So the way I use that as well is to look at others and say, this is what I'm not. I have to go through that, where I have to, I wasn't born with just the knowing who I am. My sun was in the opposite side of the chart. So I'm going to utilize, and because I know that house, it really clarified it for me. And it allowed me to go, oh, wow. So not that I never had a backbone, but I was always I always felt like I needed to work with people, because the 7th house and descendant is Libran in a way. It has the Libran quality, the Libran archetype. So, and Libra is, working with others, being fair, having the partnerships and all of that. And my sun happens to sit there in that part of the chart. Now, not having my ascendant, I would have no clue that's where my sun is. It's in that sphere, and it clarified it for me. And I used it to reflect back on my life. I go, wow. So all this time I felt like I needed to be working with people, because I never felt like I was fully integrated in my own solar self. Like, I never had my own drive to do things unless I was doing it with others. Now, that also doesn't mean that I would use it to, I would have to just work with others. I actually learned what I'm not through that process. And now I've become more integrated and say, this is what I need to be doing for myself. So thank you, 7th house. Thank you, friendships, partnerships, people I've been connected to, and all of that. Without that chart being laid out for me like that, then yeah, I wouldn't have the ability to see it. And when you had mentioned the IC too, so the ascendant, descendant, and then on the vertical line, you have the IC, which is at the bottom of the chart, and you have the midheaven, which is at the top, where so the bottom of the chart is your inner world, your inner comfort, your inner security. You're not going to have that unless you have your houses in place. I happen to have Pisces in that house, and I have Mars in that house. And it's not on the IC, but it's in that angle. And so with that also tells me I am a warrior for it. Is kind of like having Mars in Cancer, because I have Mars in that 4th Cancerian realm. And it's like, I'd go to war for my family, or I'd go to war for my own inner security and all of that. As soon as something is hindering that, I'll go to war and I'll fight. I'll become that Aryan warrior. So another thing that was clarified for me. So yeah, you're really getting it's like getting a puzzle. And you get to just with the ascendant, you're getting the front cover, and you're like, oh, this is what the puzzle's about. This is what and then all the other little parts that you get within the puzzle, you would have never known unless you have the picture of what you're putting together. It's going to take you forever to figure it out. Right. So you need that cover. So you need that ascendant to really get it going. Right. And just to add on that last angle, the opposite of your IC, which would be your midheaven, and like you were mentioning before, would be the outer realm, not the inner realm. So the outer security, the how you are seen in the sense of achievement. What is your service to the world, and how is it that you're making it in the world, and where you're being placed to be successful. So it's all cohesive. It all works together in one. It's all different cogs in the same machine. And now you up to this point, you could see like having just the one thing out of the big three, the ascendant, actually said, you could see how it's just as important as the other two, because it does set, like I emphasized at the beginning, it sets the stage. It gives you all the elements and areas of life that need to be worked with in specific ways, and where you're going to have those specific drives in your life. So the first house, the ascendant, is vital. And so if you ever were to go get an astrology reading, please bring your exact time. And this is why you would need it now. And this is why you don't use things like CoStar and all that other stuff, because it does give you this, but it doesn't give you the reasons what, like, that's why this, the teenage girl astrology is, I think it's falling off because people are finally starting to understand this.
Yeah. There's more accessible information, and it's more so in your face, I think, the accessible information than it has been. And that's what you got to watch, like with cookie cutter astrology, because even with the ascendant, you'll constantly hear, oh, it's the mask you wear. And that's not necessarily true. Like, it's not that. There's still a driving force behind the mask. That sounds very impersonal, whereas the ascendant is a very personal, soulful, self-impression as well. And like we said, like, it's on that borderline of being, the inner self, but it's also very much the outer self as well too. So in that sort of a sense, it can be how we even view the world, or, how we kind of view those outer experiences on top of it too. And it's not to say that it's like that, you're not coming at it from some superficial standpoint, like as if when they try to tell you that it's, oh, the mask you wear, or the lens that, it is the lens of which, you see things through. But this is how this plays into what we were saying about the moon as well, because, this, it's more so of that first impression. Whereas once that is cognitively ingested in that sort of way, and then processed through everything else, then it's going to transform in other directions as well too. Like, I'm just trying to think of, even for me as an example, like, do I view outer experiences in a, I guess you could say, yeah, in a mercurial way, but in a more so, in a Virgo way. I guess so. Yeah. There is plenty of times where, but it's very personal, very to myself, where it's like, a lot of times I'll just be very observant of things and just kind of like breaking them down. And this may be seen from maybe an outer perspective of having a little bit of a detachment in a sort of way, whereas I'm just kind of calculating things. So yeah, I can see that, and I can see that an example where minimal and limited, I'm not really going into it, but yeah, just think about, even if your rising sign, how is it maybe that you may view things? And if that's the case, if you could start seeing that and see how it links up, can you see how that could be beneficial? And can you see how that then may potentially get you in trouble, especially when it's translated through whatever your chart ruler is, and how that even plays along with your sun and your moon as well, and everything else.
Yeah. And with that too, the difference is, like we said, you could be born on the same day, but 2 hours later, and you're a completely different chart, and you're completely different setup, and you're going to have a different lens. So that's why it is important. And it's how people are, like, for example, like, say, well, we'll use both of us as in comparison with, someone with a Sagittarius rising, who's a big thinker and sees this, the world in like more of a philosophical sense and all of that. I know I'm known as the space cadet to a lot of my friends, and a lot of my, like, oh yeah, he's out there. Like, I have Jupiter in the 8th, it's, I'm all about the deep subjects and being philosophical. And I want to talk about secrets and things, psyops. And I do like the conspiracy conversations, but not in the way of like fear mongering and, follow my channel because I'm going to give you cheap dopamine hits. But like, I literally am interested in the deep, dark secrets, but I want to bring it through the Gemini of my sun and have just those. That's where I want to have those minuscule conversations. Like, oh yeah, if we're going to have like, just like everyday mundane talk, well, I'm still going to bring that Jupiterian big picture thing. And that's the filter I'm going to see it through. And that's how people are going to recognize me as. Where, say with you, Gio, you've mentioned like, in relationships you've been with women and you know, and other people, friends, whatever, people could see you as this detached, kind of disassociated person, and it looks like you don't, you know, maybe you don't care as much or like whatever, but you have that Virgo of like, you know, assimilation character of like you're sitting there observing and you're trying to assimilate and put things together in your mind, and then the cat gets out of the bag once that Aryan impulse is activated, you know, with your ruling planet being Mercury in Aries, where once you are ready to express yourself and you're around, you know, because you have in the seventh house around the right people and the right partnership on the right podcast, right? All of a sudden you're going to be firing off. The Aries comes out, you know, now you're reading comments on your podcast that you're on and you're like, oh yeah, I want to go to fucking war for this podcast because that shit's activated. Yet you could have been looking at that comment for a half hour thinking about shit like a Virgo and breaking it down and being critical about him. Like, how's this motherfucker? Like, what's he even mean? Or what's he trying to say and all that? And then once like you've assimilated it, now the Mercury Aries, the chart ruler, is now activated and you're like, okay, ready to go to fucking war. I've done all the Virgo work with it. Now, how is that going to express itself? Well, it's going to express itself through Aries because that's where that planet is answering to Aries, or is in the sphere of Aries in the seventh house, you know? So yeah, this is a big piece to the puzzle, and this is something that is vital in your understanding of astrology. And if you're someone that just knows your sun or your moon and you think it's bullshit and all that, go get your exact time and go get your ascendant and have someone put it. If you don't know how to do it, go have someone put it together, like an astrologer or someone who knows astrology, and you will start to see how this science is actually way more in depth, and that you need these things specifically for it to work properly. So don't call it out until you know how the hell it even works. And a lot of people at first, right? Like what, maybe in the uprising in the past 4 or 5 years, people have finally like caught on to the big three, right? That's like the thing now, right? That's starting to become like more kindergarten than not for people just getting into it. Like they know their big three, and we could probably thank social media and TikTok and all that for that. But this truly is part of this, like this is the beginning to understanding how deep it truly goes and how it works. And so your ascendant sign is, like I said, as vital as the sun and the moon, and you should go and find that out. And with that, have fun learning the story of your chart. Have fun learning what it is, like how you are going to experience the areas of life that you have now. You know, where is your moon? Where is your sun? You're not going to know until you have the chart the way it's supposed to be laid out. And then with that, you see the story start to play out. And now it's, like I said, I didn't get into horoscopes until after I was like big on the whole astrotheology and syncretism and connecting it to religions. And then when I was getting to the horoscope and I started to go, okay, so, you know, astrology tells the story of nature and the realm we're in and all that. So now I could see how it could tell the story of a person. And when I had done my chart and seen my house, I was like, oh, I can't believe it. The one biggest thing for me too is noticing the energies that are in your life from those houses and then seeing it manifest, as in like, I always get these types of people in this relationship. Well, look at your descendant, look at your 11th house, and you'll start to see like, oh, wow, I always get these energies. Like my biggest supporters are Libras. It's my 11th house. That's the house of these people clap their hands for you, right? It's the people that are cheering you on. It's the networks that support you. Shout out Ann, shout out Geo. Yeah, right. Or yeah, Gallo. I was going to say Geo. Well, you have Libra in the first house.
Oh yeah, sure.
But yeah, and then on top of that, right, like see how the story starts to unfold. My son, I said before, is in the 7th house, which is the Libran house, right? In the traditional, just, you know, thema mundi setup of Aries is first house, Taurus is all that, the original setup. 7th house, 7th sign is Libra, and my son's in there, and my biggest supporters are Libras, which is in my 11th house. So it plays in, and you start to see these patterns kind of interconnect. You start to see the puzzle come together, for sure.
Yeah. That whole reflection thing, I think, is the best point. I like one of the best parts about astrology in that sort of sense. But another thing that, because you said something that just made me think of it, but now I can't remember. But yeah, that whole how we're looking at it in that sort of sense too. Of, you know, I also, when you come into more of this understanding, like, I think I've said it to you before personally and stuff too, where it's like if you kind of try to use astrology in a more of a predictive nature and stuff like that, even just within your own personal life and everything, even today, yeah, I mean, you could do that and everything, but like, I think you should probably, it could set up expectations. I feel like,
Right.
I tried to come into that viewpoint at one point or whatever and stuff, and kind of try to like recall what maybe the projected weather forecast of the astrology was going to be. But I saw that there was a tendency to like maybe set up some sort of expectation thing, and you kind of end up maybe manifesting those things, especially if there may be some sort of things where you don't want that. And it's like, oh, I really don't want that to happen. I don't want to have that kind of resistance. I don't, whatever. And if that's so much more easily accessible in, the more negative stuff, that you tend to attach those things. And then what the next thing you know is you get that. Whereas like now it's like, I like to look at it where it's like I go about my days to do whatever and stuff. Yeah, there may be some things I'm aware of and stuff like that, but not like I'm not.
It's reaffirming.
Yeah. And then basically something happens, and then I kind of see what, the astrology was or whatever. And it's like, oh, wow, like that makes a lot of stuff. And, I've had moments where it's been able to be like, oh, well, this is kind of how I reacted. This is what my instinctual behavior was, through my ascendant, let's say, because the ascendant could be your instinctual behavior as well. And I saw that and I'm like, oh, well, I could have processed that in a different way. Well, what's the different way you would have done? And after the end of going through that cycle of it and looking at it, I'm like, wow, like I just learned something about myself. I just learned a valuable lesson of how I should, conduct myself in a certain way, how I react or respond to something, the way I'm thinking or feeling. And it just gave me that better perspective where I was like, you know what, I rather look at the astrology in that sort of sense when it comes to my chart. And, yes, have a general awareness. But when you start looking where it's like, well, this at this time it's going to start aspecting this planet in my chart. And like, I really got to stay off the roads at that time, or I really got to, like that type of shit creates this like hypochondriac type of energy. And it's next thing you know, you walk into the very thing that you're trying to resist, because it's easier to attach to what we don't want rather than what we do want.
Right. Yeah, and to think about it like this too, I mean, I see, and it's also and this could be my Sagittarian lens, right? But the way I like to see the chart, if you want to use it as predictive, or like almost like have some sort of expectation of how the energy is going to be in your life, or what you're going to be expecting something to happen and all that, is look at your chart like it's something to transcend. It's not something you use it to say, okay, this is the state I was born into. Like, this is my tendencies. This is what's probably going to, I have Saturn in the second house. You're going to have money issues. Well, I mean, I have Saturn in the second house, right? So like there's limitations, blockages. I got to work extra hard for basically jack shit, right? Like Saturn's like, you're not going to make a lot of money, but you're going to work your ass off. And that's what that would say. So I could be, and that squares Venus, right? So in my chart. So like I could say, oh, my second house Saturn squares my Venus in the fifth house. So what would that tell me? Oh, well, if I were to be pessimistic, I'd be like, well, if I don't, I'm going to be fucking broke, poor, and I'm not going to be able to have a good time and enjoy the pleasures of life, because I have Saturn there to tell me that you can't enjoy the pleasures because your second house has to be catered to and all that. Where if you look at it in more of a transcendent manner, it's like, well, no, Saturn's saying in my chart, if you get your money and your shit together and you know your value and you know your values and skill set and you use it to build something in your life, house of Taurus, second house, it's squaring the Venus. It will fuel the Venus, or it will allow the Venus to express itself, meaning I'll be able to enjoy the simple pleasures in life and, one night stands and gambling and sports and all that stuff if I have that Saturn taken care of. If it's not taken care of and I don't transcend or integrate it into myself, that aspect I could be real negative about and say, or it's gonna, well, what it would create for me is I will not really have that much pleasure in my life. I will not have a love life. I will not have the ability to go gamble or just enjoy sports or the fifth house stuff of just fun and children and all that, because my second house isn't catered to. And Saturn's going, hey man, like I told you had work to do here first, right? So you have that choice to see what, talk about lens, right? Like, and your rising sign is gonna give you the hint on how you're going to see these things, even how you read your astrology chart, or how you support your football team, or how how you feel about other people and all that, because your chart's laid out. But I like to look at astrology as you have the opportunity, once you have become self-aware, which that's what the chart is at first. And now you're using it to go, okay, now that I'm self-aware of those tendencies and these placements in my chart, and thank you, rising sign, for giving me these areas of life that I know I need to work on, and where I need to, how I need to communicate to whom and when and how and this and that, and what my midheaven is, so where I'm going to achieve the most and what's going to bring my family more money or me more money and all that, is I'm going to use this now to ascend or transcend beyond these tendencies and limitations that the chart has laid out for me. So not using it more so as predictive, but evolutionary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the main key when we're going to go into all this is going to be about that coming into awareness, and the rising is big on that. Like you said, like that viewing through the rising is how we come into awareness of ourselves and what we're here to explore about ourselves. And it's like, well, why the ascendant and stuff? Well, it is linked to the natures of the desires of the soul, and it helps us shed that light as well, along with many other things. But this is another factor. It's why it's a big three, of shedding the light on what's coming up from the unconscious as well, and or the underworld, or the whole thing of what is hidden and stuff too. And as far as like the coming to awareness of self, and I'm going to try to use an example that's not my own and stuff too. Say like a Leo rising, right? A Leo rising, and so their ruling planet is the sun. Say their sun is in Taurus in the 8th house, let's just so to say, right? And yeah, they can have that very big expressive way of themselves. They can tend to be flashy and stuff too, really value things, and look at what I got and stuff. But it also makes them feel good in a sort of sense. But in the 8th house, there could be a coming and going and a passing of that stimulation from those things, or the superficiality kind of drives people away in their own life. So it they can come into this awareness of self, of being like, well, I need to find what's really valuable and what's really going to stabilize and be somewhat long lasting as well, and learn how to appreciate it for myself, whereas not so much on the on the outer scale. And it's not necessarily an identification of me. This is me, but I have to appreciate it. I have to appreciate it first and be firm and stable within it for my own stability, not maybe for any outer reasons beyond myself. That can be, and that's just a very, one very focal example of it. And it's not necessarily what is or how it is, but that could be something. And noticing how to come into understand it. Like, that's the thing. Like, maybe their relationships just, it's like, they tend to do the part and everything and stuff, but their relationships don't even last and stuff too. Like, and it has a tendency, because it's like, they outshine their partner and they're stubborn in the way of how they want to stick to, well, now I got to be the one who's doing this and do. There is a control factor that could play in there too. But this is where coming into awareness of it, of just kind of like sitting there and take the step back and be like, well, I have to see what am I being bullheaded on and stuff too, where, I'm being too forceful with my, or it could be the fact of just, not even wanting to change in that sort of sense. Just just being like, nah, this is me. That's how I am. I'm going to be like this. I like what I like and stuff. And we all know that could be very, abrasive in relations with others. It doesn't have to be intimate relationships, but just with others. So what kind of self-awareness can you come through even just that viewing of a lens?
Right. So, and that's the beauty of it. Right. And that's what astrology truly, if you were to use it in an applicative way and, integrate a self-awareness into your everyday living and grow and evolve as a human being and become who you really are, and there's people out there that don't need this stuff, right? Like some people just evolve and they become who they are, and who knows, they might just have a great chart. They don't even need an astrology reading, but you find out a lot of people come to this stuff because they're having an issue with that self-awareness, or they don't have the confidence in that self-discovery, or they've been blinded and so brainwashed by society and what other people outside of them have told them to be or what they are. are, that astrology is beautiful in that sense of you have the ability now to start reflecting. And you said this years ago, I think, to me, where you said, even if it was all bullshit, you know, you were saying like, even if it was, it still gets you observing everything about yourself in certain ways. You start to really think. Like, I had someone tell me recently, like, yeah, I'm a Virgo sun, but like, can't I just like read that and make it work or make it fit? I go, well, sure, but have you ever got your chart read? He goes, no. What do you mean a chart? And I go, oh, well, I'm like, okay, so there's different aspects. He goes, well, yeah, but then how could like planets like make me who I am? It's like, you don't have to think that way. You know, it's a, regardless of whether you believe the planets are doing anything or this chart's ruling you, telling you something, what this does is it starts to really bring the self-actualization process into it if you are serious about it. If you actually just take the 30 days out and read and understand where your chart is on the basic level, you all of a sudden you can be changed within that 30 days, regardless if you believe it or not, because you start to actually really observe the self and start to think about it. And now if you end up trusting it, this is the perfect tool in my eyes to say, hey, this is a mirror to who you are or were at birth and who you potentially are now, whether you look at your natal or your progress charts. And it's going to give you that insight to say, okay, I thought I was this. Society told me I was this. My parents told me I was this, but I never felt that way. And then you could go read your chart and something, so you get that one thing, oh yeah, that is me. No shit. Like, and all of a sudden that interest just ricochets into all these different paths and things, and it leads into that self-actualization and the ability then to, you know, a long time ago, I came up with the analogy of astrology is like the braille for the spiritually blind or the psychologically blind. It's braille. Like if you're blind in self-awareness, it's like you could reach out and touch the braille in the sky and it could tell you what you are, and then you can start opening your eyes to it. And now all of a sudden you start to have more of a better idea of what you are. And I guess why we wanted to start the series too, and we're emphasizing today the Ascendant and all that, is you have to do it right. And if you do it right, it could be the greatest gift that you've ever been given if you are in a search for your soul or for yourself and self-actualization.
Yeah, exactly right. Like I think, and I still stick to that whole thing where this gives you, some people may just naturally be able to learn from their lessons and, you know, become self-aware through certain experiences. Yeah, because some people have that internal discipline that drives them to be able to evolve in that way and stuff. But maybe for some others that, you know, like you said, a lot of it comes from heavy conditioning. It's not that something's fucking wrong with you. You know, it's not necessarily that. It comes from heavy conditioning and, you know, the different perspectives on experience and stuff. But I think that getting into the astrology and especially starting that way with, you know, the big three, like coming into the chart, it allows you to test your accountability. How accountable can you be for yourself and how you are or how you act or how you think? That's what I mean. It's like, oh yeah, we could be accountable for our actions, but you know, the astrology is not just telling us it's telling us about our feelings. It's telling us about our emotions, telling us about our mental way of thinking, the subconscious, you know what I mean? Like, and it's getting you to view those areas and where a lot of those are a lot more difficult to hold yourself accountable for when you view them in a 360 view and see them in full light and stuff. A lot of it's going to come in where you're going to want to be resistant to that because your ego is going to be speaking. But that's the whole point of it, is you get your ego in check, where it allows you to be like, instead of denying that this is how you are, seeing that is a potential, that you have the potential of being this sort of way or reacting this sort of way. And then when you hold yourself accountable and you have released, you know, you've released the chains from yourself of, you know, holding yourself back from really seeing into, well, why am I like that? What has it been? Is it something that's happened to me? Like, you get to dig into these deeper parts of yourself. And no matter what, just like you were saying, like, even if it is like, oh, well, you know, can I just put, you know, look into it in that way? Sure, you can, if it's going to get you to look at yourself in a certain way. But I think if you're just doing it that way, I think you're already going in with the intention of like, I'm only going to look at it for what I want it to, you know, to show me.
If you're not
going to look at
the
negatives
the right way, then you're going to get the outcome. You know, that's like reading an instructions booklet and you glaze over it, and then you assume the things in the instruction booklet, but you don't read it the right way and don't follow the actual instructions. And that's what astrology is like. And that's why you go pay someone, if you don't want to do it, to say, hey, I'm going to break down the story for you. And the whole thing connects the aspects, how the planets are talking, what your ascendant is, where your houses are, where the planets are in the houses and how they're talking and all of that, and what areas of life. And it's such an in-depth thing, and people rip on it a lot, but that's because they just don't understand it. They didn't read the instructions booklet. And knowing your big three is the beginning to that. And highly not only recommend, but I'd say adamantly saying that you need to do that to really get the full substance and nourishment that you would get from astrology. So to be honest with you, I think that's all I really would have to say. I wanted to read a passage from the book, but did you have anything else you wanted to add about it?
No, that's really it. Once again, just to reiterate and stuff, it's that whole thing of the first self-expression. It could even be your environment could end up, because the environment that you tend to be in can be reflective of even yourself and stuff too. So you may have the tendency to be in certain environments, and that's another thing to analyze. So once again, that's really it. It's coming into self-awareness, self-expression, self-appearance, self-impressions and stuff in that sort of way, and just kind of how we are becoming.
All right. So last week when we did the moon, I'm really on this author right now, but her name is Amy Herring. This is called Essential Astrology, Everything You Need to Know to Interpret Your Natal Chart. And I've been reading her books lately, and I love them. And I love the way she, I think my 6th house Mercury is in love with the detail that she gives and how she does it. But I'm going to read a little section here about the first house and the ascendant. The ascendant marks the beginning cusp of the first house. The ascendant represents the first characteristics about us that people observe on first encounter, sometimes even before they've spoken to us. It is our contact point with the world and vice versa. If you were a building, then the ascendant would be your front door. The front door serves to channel traffic in and out of the building, letting people in and out, as well as sometimes keeping people safe inside and locking out those who don't belong. The ascendant metaphorically serves this purpose. It is not only how you step out into the world, but also how you take it in. So into everything, Gio, that you just basically said about the internal, external, how you're going to, not only how are you, it's a personal thing, not just a mask you wear.
Yeah.
So it says the ascendant plays an important part in first impressions. How we come across to others is only part of the role that the ascendant plays, but it is an important one. Understanding the simple idea of whether you come across as curious and talkative, regal and charismatic, or friendly and accommodating can help you begin to understand your rising sign and the role it plays in your chart. How others respond to your style of approach, how you seem to be, can be quite significant. Your own natural style is not better or worse than any other style, but a healthy ascendant will serve as this natural and seamless connection to the world, whereas an unhealthy ascendant often feels awkward, a clunky interface that makes everyone feel uncomfortable, such as when you're trying to pretend to be someone you're not or fit in somewhere you don't and aren't sure whether you're doing it convincingly. Whether or not someone likes you or considers you to have made a good impression on them is not a function of your natural style of interaction, unencumbered by self-consciousness or strategy. Equally important is the ascendant's role in your style of approach to the world around you, not just its reaction to you. What is your attitude towards the world and life in general? Not your thoughts, feelings, or moral judgments about it, but your instinctual bearing towards it.
Exactly. Instinctual behavior.
Yeah. And first house would be in the traditional thema mundi, right? It's Aries. Right. Yep. So it's the Aries archetype. It's the impulse of self. It's the initial impulse. It's the front door of your building, right? Where like Pluto or the 8th house is your basement. Or that would be maybe your 12th. Your 8th house is more so your, it's things you want to hide. It's the things you hide in your basement. Where the 12th is kind of like the infinite basement of that. But yeah,
or it could be your sub pump, your fucking, what is that called? The fucking sewer lines.
Right. Yeah. It could be
pumping the shit out.
Yeah. Where like, and also like, Cancer could be the, it's the kitchen and all that, where Capricorn's like the the attic top of the house where you've put all your trophies and your whatever, or things that you have on your wall, like anything that's representing achievement or structure, and or it's the walls surrounding the house, the structure. But you could use these archetypes and metaphors to really see it. And so with the ascendant, it really is like someone knocking on that door, and it's that first impression of the house, and you answering it, saying, "Hey, how you doing?" And that's the role of it. So, and that's the, like I said, the beautiful thing of it. So yeah, that's basically it. Another fun conversation about this. Next week, I think we want to do Mercury, right? We'll start doing the personal planets.
Exactly. So hopefully from this and the past 2 episodes with the moon and the sun, this helped give you, reason to go back and look on your chart, or to, maybe say, hey, you know what? I'm actually going to go look now, or I'm going to discover these things that I haven't discovered before, or just once again, going, looking at it again, taking another deeper look in this sort of sense, and, maybe taking a different approach. And, that's the whole, it's been very enlightening to ourselves as well through the process, and it's going to continue in that way. But yeah, it's going to be fun getting into more of the personal planets in that sort of sense, and even being able to discuss these planets as chart rulers, which will play into the ascendant as well. So yeah, that'll be good. Make sure you like and subscribe.
Right. And like, subscribe, comment, good or bad, the deal. And we'll be posting more clips and hopefully getting back to social media and stuff like that. A lot of stuff going on, as always. But we'll be interacting with you guys as much as we can, and we have some other content hopefully to bring to you. I'm in the process of learning video editing and all this other stuff. So, but we have so much to talk about and bring, and at times we were having trouble thinking of topics because there's so many. But we are really sticking with this astrology thing and going to have a good time with it. And now that we're going to be going back into planets, lastly, I'd like to add that we'll probably get a little more into the theology of things and the biblical references and the mythologies and stuff. We didn't really get to do that this week because the ascendant really doesn't have that. This is more of an aspect point in the chart. So,
yeah.
All right.
So,
well,
till next time.
Thank you guys again for listening. We appreciate all of you for sticking around if you've made it. And till next time.